good. We have a lot of stuff in my car and Roger's car, and we're going to take it up with Shore Ski Club afterwards for their food bank. So thank you very much, whatever. And that is something that we are doing to help people there and the people. So Mary, I just said we're the food pantry that we're helping with Shoreditch High School Key Club. So thank you for all being here. It's unusual that we do this, but it's a pleasure because of a lot of things going on, and certainly Go Purdue and NIC today tonight, et cetera. But today is another special day because on this day, on April 4th, Martin Luther King was murdered. Tom and I just went up to the memorial 17th and Broadway and put some flowers out. There are some memorial services there today. So as far as Robert Kennedy is concerned, the real Robert Kennedy, here's something that I've always had in my house about what he said. Let us dedicate ourselves to what the Greeks wrote so many years ago, to tame the savage genius of man, and to make gentle the life of the world. Robert Kennedy spoke that here in 1968 on this date. The memorial up there is now a federal honored landmark, and it is run by the Park Service. I thought one other thing I might mention, just a couple of things that he said because it's so important. For those of you who are black, considering this is what he said on the date that he spoke up there. Martin Luther King had been murdered, and Robert Kennedy was standing there with Mayor Lugar. I was not there. And he read this. For those of you who are black, considering the evidence evidently is that there was a white people were responsible, you can be filled with bitterness and with hatred and desire to revenge. We can move in that direction as a country in greater polarization, black people among blacks and white among whites, filled with hatred toward one another. Or we can make an effort, as Martin Luther King did, to understand and comprehend and replace violence, the stain of bloodshed that has spread across our land, with an effort to understand compassion and love. And then he quoted from Ulysses, even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget, falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God. Certainly appropriate then and now. When Brian comes, I'll introduce him. But if you all got a little blur, I think some of you, about the history here. So I want to turn this back to Mary.
Great. Thanks. Thank you very much. It's always good to know history. Yes.
We've got some guests from Perry
And it's time to introduce our guests and visiting Kiwanians. Do we have anyone from the Kiwanis Club in Perry Township?
Oh, me. Oh.
How many people do you have with your group today? Name them off.
I don't know these other guys. They just showed up. I was looking for
Just
four
pull them
people.
off the street.
I was looking for
Pull them off
members.
the street.
Aren't you the Uber driver?
I was.
That's why the street's not finished out front.
Yeah, you're the problem.
Is this some kind of meeting? I just hope there's not a test later.
So this is Les Brandon. Les is one of our founding members in our club 40-some years ago. And Gary Treehart. Gary came to us a few years ago from Goshen. This is Jim Landwerlin. He's our newest member. And I'm Scott Split.
Well, welcome, and we're always glad to have you. Thank you for joining us.
We have another guest,
here.
Tom Mincy, who's been a member of our club off and on. We're glad to have him here as well.
And your guests.
So, I'm Megan Trolley. I work for the Boy Scouts, and I work with Ray Curti.
Yeah, she's a member of our club.
Yeah.
Okay. Then there you go.
Boy Scout.
Let's see. So, have you talked about the camp?
Yes.
Okay. So this is kind of not our usual program, so we're doing this as a free-for-all. So, without further ado,
Now that she's
Brian
eating.
Shapiro.
That's okay.
Now that he's sitting and eating, we're so glad that you let us do this today, Brian. You can share what's happening in this part of the city and Shapiro's.
Oh, I'm sure.
Thank you.
They already spilled food on it, so you know.
Brian is the great grandson of Louis and Rebecca, fourth generation owner of this esteemed Shapiro's Delicatessen. The Shapiro's ancestors had a grocery in Odessa, Ukraine. They came to America. After raising capital, they opened a business here, which I think some of you have seen on the internet, and they have lived above this place with 8 children. So, in defiance of the election of the plan, the place was involved in as Shapiro's Kosher Foods, and it stood up to the plan. Shapiro's expanded and has been run for 2005, I think that's right. And they opened various. His relative right here, where you see pictures of his relative, esteemed relative. You see the similarity. And so Brian's going to talk about this place and his family, and how we fortunately are to have such a special place. I've been here many, many years, and it helped. And I've been here when Al Gore was here, and various other luminaries. And it's my pleasure to introduce my friend Brian Shapiro.
Well, thank you all for coming. I've known Greg for many years. I was one of his big backers when he ran for city council and got beat. So, but I grew up in Newcastle, Indiana, and when I graduated high school, I went down to Bloomington, went to business school, went to law school, and you know, my great uncle Max, who was in the picture, didn't have any kids, so they drafted me to be in the restaurant business. And so you know, here I am 40 years later. And so when they came from Russia, the family, you had to have a sponsor. Many of you in this room, you know, your ancestors came from someplace else, and you had to have a sponsor. And the sponsor we had was a German family, and they had placed my great-grandfather with a scrap dealer up in Lafayette, Indiana. And my great-grandfather did not like the scrap business. The family had been in the food business. We have records dating back to the 1700s with the Tsar's army in Russia. So, you know, genetically in the Shapiro bloodline, you know, we've been in food forever. And the picture there with the horse is my great-grandfather Louis, who is in this picture, but obviously that picture is probably from 1902 or 3, and that house was over in Illinois Street. In Illinois, that house is now an interstate ramp. And this entire area down here was Jewish. You know, they had 3 or 4 Jewish shuls down here, temples, and on the other side of the interstate ramp was called Beit Denny, who was the, you know, again, you know, it's kind of like allegedly the first African American employee of the Parks Department for the city of Indianapolis. But, you know, in those days, the Jewish people, the black folks, immigrants that were Italian Catholics, Polish, we were all kind of sent down here to the south side, whereas the north side was more Protestant oriented. And it was a quite thriving community. And that house they sold and bought in the middle of the store. There's 2 posts, and my great-grandparents lived above there, and they had 8 kids. 5 were born in Ukraine, they were very little when they came, some of them. And the age difference between the oldest and the youngest was 23 years. So some of my father's first cousins who are still alive are closer in age to me than my father. But, you know, like we all have learned, you know, people had large families back then, all of us, because people died, you know, they needed, you know, the families to either run the farms or the family business or whatever. But so we were here, you know, in this area, and again, it was a very Jewish area from here all the way down. In fact, the Jewish cemeteries are down on Kelly Street. And on the north side of Kelly Street are the Jewish cemeteries, and on the south side of Kelly Street is the Catholic cemetery. So, you know, there was kind of this rich heritage around here, and you know, everybody got along. In fact, there was a book written called Neighborhood of Saturdays, and you know, everybody got together. You know, and in fact, it made the New York Times even had an article on it. But you know, as time went on, you know, the neighborhood changed. As Greg referred, in the 20s, the Ku Klux Klan Governor Jackson basically took over the State House. And my great-grandfather remodeled the restaurant and put the Star of David up, and that's in that photo there. And he kind of did that in defiance. And you can see where the apartment is. You know, if you look in the front, you can still kind of see that. So, you know, I guess that we've been rebels, but you know, my great-grandfather, you know, the pogroms, the Russian police, the Ukrainian police came in and broke his arm, and you know, just tore up the place. And my great-grandmother says, we're done. And you know, they left, and they ended up here. And you know, and as we sit here, you're watching the transformation of the neighborhood, which essentially nothing happened for 50 years down here. You know, there wasn't any money invested on the south side. And, you know, TWG has that project, you know, down the street, and they're going to do another one 3 blocks in that direction on McCarty Street. So you're kind of witnessing the old south side being reinvented. You know, Ursel's going to spend over $1 billion on the soccer stadium, and you know, I mean, it's just changing. But you know, the family, you know, we were here, and you know, serving. You know, it used to be kosher, and the restaurant was kosher with meat, with red meat, and then another one of my great uncles, Uncle Izzy, across the street they had the Peter Pan grocery store, and it was dairy. So they kind of had the monopoly, right? You know, one side of the street they had meat, and then the other side of the street was dairy. And where the Greek island was Ryswick Meat Shop, which was a kosher butcher. And you know, where you could get kosher chickens and kosher meat, and again, it was a very homogeneous neighborhood, you know, with Jewish people. And then, you know, kind of when Governor Jackson came in, and then probably the biggest thing that hurt the Jewish neighborhood was when they put in Madison Avenue. My great-grandparents, when they got some money, bought a house over on Allen Street by Garfield Park. But you couldn't, you know, they all walked to shul, right? You know, you couldn't, you know, they were all very religious, and you know, all of a sudden you had this gigantic road, and there wasn't a whole lot of places to cross. So, you know, that kind of started the end of the Jewish growth down here. You know, Mel Simon's wife, Bess, lived down on Arizona Street, right? I think, and Sid Eskenazi lived 3 doors down. And, you know, and again, they all kind of, they all grew up together, played together, and then ended up moving more north, just because the people that ran the city, probably by intentional, wanted to bust up the neighborhood. I mean, they didn't, here are these Jewish people around with, on lots of yarmulkes, and, they were just strangers. So they busted it up, and then when they did the interstate, that finished it off. Because, many of of the people in these pictures had houses literally where the interstate is. And it's not like today, they really didn't pay them very much for the house, so it's kind of like starting over. And then the African American neighborhood, which was more in that direction, they were just completely eliminated. And so here we are today, moving forward. But we buy our meat from Vienna. And back then it was called Wilno because it was kosher. We buy it from the same people. And most of the stuff that you eat comes, from generations of the same families. Now, unfortunately, as we consolidate in the food business, there's less and less of that. But, our main course products that, that you're familiar with, we buy from the same people. I mean, 4th, 5th, 6th generations. And in fact, our fresh red meat comes out of north of Evansville. It's a meat processing plant called DeWig. And you may have seen this on some of the menus. And it is the only USDA inspected meat live kill plant left in the state of Indiana. And those of you that are familiar with the South, we used to have Stark and Wetzel, used to have Emge, gone. Eckrich used to be up in Fort Wayne, they're gone. And it's kind of sad, but we tried just to do USDA inspected stuff, and there's local places, but it's not as strict.
Brian, what's kosher?
What is kosher?
Explain the difference. What is you are? What, besides you, what is kosher?
Well, as most of you know from reading the First Testament, it's a process of identifying meats to eat, and it's a process of how to kill an animal humanely. For instance, Jewish people don't eat don't eat from certain types of hooves, like a pig or a lion. And some of the, literature on that, we even go back to, well, do we want an animal that eats other animals? And because we eat an animal that eats another animal, is that, and remember, this is 2,500 years ago. This is a long time ago. And so is that animal, that aggression, going to be passed on to us because we are eating aggressive animals? And there's a whole bunch of that. But and then it's a way of how they the animal's not supposed to suffer, and the type of food that you feed them. You're not kosher chickens aren't supposed to be fed meal that was a chicken. You're not and unfortunately that's we deal with that a lot in America because they'll grind up chickens and feed chickens to chickens, which I kind of think is gross, and we try to avoid doing that, but trust me, it's very prevalent out there. So and then the other thing with being kosher is that you're not supposed to mix milk and beef together at the same time, because you're asking too much from the animal at one time. So so there's kind of these reasons. There's also reasons that that if you eat a lot of dairy, you eat a cheeseburger, and then you go run or you work outside, you're liable to get indigestion because the meat processes in your stomach at a different rate than dairy. So that's the short answer. If you are taking a Jewish test, you'll fail it. I just told you, or you'll get a D or something. But those are kind of the short answers on the kosher. We are not kosher at all there anymore. When they started, in Chicago, there were 10 kosher live kill plants in Chicago. Today there's 1. So the price is crazy. And so that it's kind of one of those things that's around, but you can go to Trader Joe's and they'll have kosher chicken by Empire and stuff. And if you actually get a kosher chicken, you can kind of tell a difference. I mean, you can kind of tell that the thing, isn't as bloody and it isn't as sinewy, or when you clean them, they're cleaner. I know that's way more than you guys wanted to hear.
Okay.
Greg, what other questions you got?
What luminaries have you had here at the Shapiro's?
Last week, we had Donald Trump Jr. and future probably Senator Banks in the restaurant.
Did you talk to them?
I did talk to them.
Did you give them your opinions about that?
They asked, they asked how long we've been here, and I says, well, since, this store since 1905. I said, and you come back in this room, I go, they're all from Ukraine. And I looked at them both and I said, history just keeps repeating itself. I mean, this is not, what you've seen in Ukraine, when the first thing happened, first comment that I made to my cousin, I go, these are probably some of the relatives that beat the shit out of our great-grandfather. I mean, it just, unfortunately, we don't solve the problem. Or we try to solve the problem and we don't do a good job at it. So, so, yeah, I mean, we've had Donald Trump himself to, as you say, Al Gore and Evan Bayh. When he's in town, he eats here on a regular basis. When he was governor, he would eat here every Sunday evening, just him and his 2 kids, and just kind of slip away. Because you can come here and eat and hide.
Wondering, what's the proximity of Eli Lilly been in the history of Shapiro?
Well, Lilly has always, Lilly has been here as long as we have. And, Lilly has been a great advocate for the city and has helped, Unfortunately now, most of the Lilly folks don't work there anymore. They work remotely. And unfortunately, I don't see that trend changing. I think that, Lilly could do a lot more with helping the downtown. I mean, these apartments that, that you see coming up, it will make, my guess is in the 5-10 years, you're going to see a new city here. You're going to see 100,000 people in downtown Indianapolis. Demographically, they're going to probably be slightly more white female than anything else. But you know, it's going to be very gentrified, and you know, you know, my kids grew up in Carmel, and you know, it's kind of funny, but you know, if you're under 35 and you want to go to a drink, you want to get a drink, how many people are going to go out and get a drink in Carmel? You know, because you're liable to get pulled over. You know, I know that, you know, my oldest daughter was kind of my ring, you know, kind of like the little ringleader in this, you know, and feisty, and she went on to Emory University in Atlanta. But I used to tell her, I go, you can't go to Hendricks County. I go, I don't care. I don't care if you're the designated driver. You're not going to Hendricks County because you will get locked up. So, you know, we always had these discussions about parties and driving, but no, I think that what you're going to see in Center Township and downtown Indianapolis in the next 10 years will blow people's mind. You know, I know that there's a lot of bad, you know, press going on, you know, but, you know, trust me, there's underage drinking going on in Carmel. and you know, and Greg, you know, he can tell you stories of bailing people out of jail in Noblesville at 1 o'clock in the morning, and you know, it just doesn't. You know, so I think that I think eventually you know, Lilly will start having people back downtown because you're going to end up having young people living in downtown. You know, and again, you know, you're going to have soccer here. You got the Pacers. You got football. You got concerts. I mean, you just have a lot of activities that are going to go on in kind of a, you know, they do you know why they call it the Mile Square? It's the old city limits. And West Street, South Street, North Street was like a half a mile from Washington Street. So North and South Street is a mile. So it's a little mislabeled. So, you know, and it become the 2 mile square. But, you know, the 2 mile square is going to be impressive of what's going to happen. Because, you know, we just have land here. And again, you know, it gets, you know, Carmel has become very congested. Do any of you live in Carmel? Yeah, I mean, you know, the roundabouts are broken now because they got too many people, you know, at rush hour, they just got so many people there that, you know, they're not working anymore. Now they work, you know, 22 hours out of the day, but, you know. So anyway, now you're going to see a total redo of Indianapolis. I mean, you know, you get a taste of it on Mass Avenue, you know, with Bottle Works. And the Hendricks family, and again, I know you keep talking about Lilly, but, you know, the Hendricks family owned ABC Supply, you know, the people where you buy your roofing and your siding and stuff. Bottle Works is 100% paid for by cash. Ironworks at Keystone at the Crossing is 100% cash. They're going to do them all. And it will be, you know, with what they've done, it will be it will be sensational.
I've got a question for you. What do you personally, maybe you and your wife, do to help the community through on Shapiro's, through some activities in the community that you look for as visionary to help with the community? That's a leading question.
Of course, Greg would ask these. You know, we get asked. You know, we get asked. You know, to fund all the time, but both of our kids are members of the LGBTQ community. The oldest one, Ellen, does private equity. The youngest one went to Rose-Hulman in 3 years. And I always tease people that she's Fox News' public enemy #1. And I did tell this to Senator Banks and Junior. She works for NVIDIA, and she does artificial intelligence for them. And you know, she's the kid that took the ACT one time and got a 35 out of 36 and got a perfect score on BC Calculus AP, and just, she thinks in a different world. I mean, she just thinks in a different level. So we have done, you know, because of the, you know, and I'll be quite candid, I knew nothing about transgender people until I had to learn about transgender people. And so locally, we help sponsor Trinity Haven House, which, you know, 20% of the transgender people commit suicide because of family or faith. And a good many of them are kicked out of their house from their parents. And Trinity Haven is kind of a house that when you're 17 or 18 to 24 for 6 months, that gives you a place to stay. So we help them. We also are underwriting a gender identity medicine at the med school, and you know, and then of course, you know, we give money to 100 other things. So, you know.
What about the other members of your family? I may not. Do you have a son also?
No, the son is now a transgender female.
And so you have 2 kids.
2.
Okay.
So that's kind of the, you know, more personal side than you probably wanted to know. But
Do you have other family who are willing to keep this business going after you're gone?
that's a very good question. The best of the 2 kids, it would be Ellen, who's the oldest one that does private equity. She's kind of more of the leadership kid, where Julie kind of thinks in. Not that Ellen's not very smart too. Don't get me wrong, but she would probably be the one. But you know,
What about other?
not a lot of people want to. You know, I mean, when you're in the restaurant business, it's 24/7. Whether you're here or you're not here, I mean, you know, there's something that always breaks. You know, we got the bakery comes in at 5:30 in the morning, and you know, we're here till 9 o'clock at night.
So you bake your own stuff here, don't you? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean.
The bakery's in the back.
Yeah, and the building behind here used to be the RC Cola bottling plant. Yes.
So my brother-in-law worked here when he was a teenager, and I know through the pandemic you value your employees' time and safety. I'd just like to hear from your perspective what it was like, what your practices with employment.
Back then or today?
Probably both, maybe a little bit.
The pandemic wore out restaurant people. It was exhausting. And you know, we did what we could to keep people safe. You know, we were, you know, we tested people and paid for it. And you know, we didn't know, you know, nobody knew what was going on for a while. And you know, we do the best that we can, you know, to keep everybody safe and you know, make them go to the doctor at least once a year, and you know, I mean, but you know, it's a family business, you know, so we kind of push that quite a bit, but it, you know, it's hard, and the pandemic was disastrous. And and we're still, and obviously everybody's seen the results because we've had such great food inflation. And most of the food inflation is because of logistics, in that, there's less truckers, there's less warehouse people, to get meat from New York to Indiana, maybe there's one guy that does it, on the same truck every other week. And your alternative is you put it on a truck and they ship it to Allentown, Pennsylvania, that ships it to Toledo, and then it gets here. Well, the more you take food on and off trucks, the greater the possibility of damage and contamination. So, and that has stressed everybody. The high prices stressed. I mean, eggs are crazy again. I mean, it's just, and honestly, I don't understand why eggs are so expensive, because it takes 62 days to make an egg. I mean, seriously. I mean, a chicken, and it's kind of the perfect food, because when they quit laying eggs, you eat it. Well, a chicken's a great, but I don't understand. I don't understand why stuff is so high, other than the transportation costs. I know that, a semi, to buy a new tire before the pandemic was $400. Now that same tire is $1,000, and used to be Michelin, now it's some Chinese brand. So, and you can't get things fixed on the weekends anymore. So, there's all kinds of that. So, and that puts a lot of stress on employees.
I was going to ask you, that sandwich looks like it's from Subway.
This? It's a bagel.
Oh.
It's a bagel with cream cheese.
Well, I really wanted to ask you.
And we make the bagel. We actually make the bagels here.
A few years ago, you were looking at a hotel across the street. Is it still?
It's
in
happening.
your plans?
It's happening. It's it probably will break ground in 60, 75 days.
Is it going to take the place of the building that's there now?
No. We may move this to the parking lot. I mean, people go, well, what do you mean? I go, well, some of these buildings are over 150 years old, and you can only fix stuff so much. It's scotch taped together in places. It's not going to fall apart, but this is new. This used to be where Paso drugstore was, and in fact, it's on that picture there. And the Pasos, who are still alive, many of them, were Portuguese Jews. And this is where back in the old days, you went to the pharmacist before you'd go to the doctor.
Before you went to the deli.
Yeah. And then next door to them was Junior's Barber Shop. So, yeah, the hotel is, the pandemic kind of slowed it down, and then we had, then you got to get financing. And, used to be, they went, for a hotel, they went 30% down now. It's not like sign here, it's very rigorous now.
Well, I'm glad you're moving forward with it.
What happened with the Shapiro's at the Fashion Mall on the north side?
The pandemic.
Is that really what?
Oh yeah. And I'm sure that you saw today that Saks is leaving.
No.
Yeah, I think they're going to tear down that entire section and make it more like I want to say the Exponent. Down in Texas, down in Austin, Simon has a mall similar, and I think No, it's in San Antonio. It's a computer name. I want to say buyer, but and they got and they'll probably build 2,000 or 3,000 apartments and make it all part of a community, and that which is probably what needs to happen.
What's your longest employee here?
The longest one we had, she has passed away, was probably 60 years. She was a cook. Most of the people right now are somewhere between 18 and 30 years. The people on the line. Rhonda, who rang me up today, she's been with me 40 years. And, kind of starting to retire, but,
You're doing something right there.
so yeah, most of them have been here quite a long time. Frank, he's been here 20 plus years, and Sam up there's, and I got second, third generation people working.
Gotta be all the benefits you give them, all the good food they get.
Yeah.
He takes care of his employees.
But, you got that. You got that at some other old-time restaurants in town.
What's your best-selling item?
Iced tea.
What about Sam?
He got you on that, Frank.
Probably corned beef. That's what people come here for, and then, and then people eat other stuff.
What are you doing with the apartment? Still an
Nothing.
apartment?
Yeah,
Or is it storage or what?
it's storage. My kids go, make it an Airbnb. I go, oh yeah, right. This is what I need.
Well, we're familiar with the experience that's been going on here with the road work. Our daughter owns Katie, and it's just tearing her up for lunch. I don't know why they can't finish that damn road. Right in front of me.
You can tell you.
Get this neighbor-
We were originally promised, and Katie knows this, and everybody, they were going to do half of it at a time. And then magically, that went out the window because they're over budget. And I don't know what else to say.
It's just frustrating.
They wanted to close it up here, and I go, and I had a meeting with them, and I go, first, the lower level people were like, oh, no, you're just an angry old elder. That literally was what I was called. You're an angry old elder, and I go. And finally, when I have Tim Oakes and what's the other? He was on the city council. He's now a partner at Ice Miller, and I have them in this room with the director. And Tim goes, "How is Mr. Shapiro going to get an 83-foot semi in here? Because you can't do it through this little door." And that's when the light bulb went on. I go, do you guys have enough? I go, you guys about being out of, if you temporarily close me, because I can't get the food in. So, and then it turned out that it's hard for me to say this, but the engineering plans that they had were literally wrong. They had temporary things on people's property that they thought they owned, and it wasn't, and they didn't have title. And you just don't know what to do. I mean, look what they did to Broad Ripple. Look what it's like, it'd be beautiful when it's done.
It is beautiful, but now they close West Field.
Yeah, it's like tonight, there's a 4:30 meeting at the Stutz building on Rethink I-6570. Now, I don't know how many of you have driven the North Split since they fixed it, but I sure, and no offense to you as an engineer, I sure in the hell hope that the engineers and the land people and the contractors all got a bunch of brand new boats and vacation houses because I don't know of almost spending $800 million how they could make a project worse. I mean, I don't know how they made it worse. So, you know, the Rethink project is trying to lower the road under the ground, which will gain us 20 acres of park space above. And they go, well, but that's going to cost an extra $150 million. I go, you only do this every 50 years, so you're talking $2 or $3 million a year amortized. Anyway, I'll let you go. I spoke way more than, you know more about the South Side than you want.
Very,
Brian, thank you so much.
Brian is the
We got
perfect-
something for
If you ever need a person to filibuster something, this is the man. So,
I learned it from Greg.
we've worked together many years. This is a certificate of appreciation to Brian Shapiro, Shapiro's Restaurant, Delicatessen, I'm sorry, in appreciation of your time spent sharing with members of the Kiwanis Club of Indianapolis and others. A donation will be made in your honor to Trinity Haven. Their mission is to provide safe, affirming housing for LGBTQ youth in experiencing housing instability. Signed by Mary, our president, on April 5th. And here it is, and thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
And anyone who has food for the pantry, I will be in the parking lot, the present parking lot. And I'll put it in our car.
Where's your?
I'm right in the front on the right side. I know you have. Thank you so much for being here.
All right. Stupid dad joke. Here we go. Ready? Stupid dad joke. How do moths swim? The butterfly stroke. And with that, we are adjourned.